Well, hello, General Hospital Daily Recap fans. Today's daily recap is for Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. First and foremost, everybody, I can't wait for Saturday. This Saturday, the 24th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, which is 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be live on YouTube, chopping it up in the chat. I know we're going to be talking a lot about Michael, Willow, Drew. I am looking forward to being with you all in the comment corner community. So mark your alarms, be there. All right, we're gonna get it on there. Now let's talk about today. I'm gonna start with Willow because really that was the best part. Willow goes to Alexis and she tells Alexis about Drew. Massive stroke. And Alexis is looking at her. Okay. And she says, and I was wondering, I wanted to talk to you. Who should tell Scout about her father? Should I or should you? And Alexis looked at her. She says, listen, honestly, I should tell Scout. And she goes, good, because I didn't know what I would say to her. Right? And Alexis says, and Willow, in light of what's happened, I feel Scout should stay with me for a while. You know, just, you know, while her father's going through this. And Willow looked at her. She said, I agree. Because Willow got plans, right? She's not done nurse ratcheting. Okay. So Alexis says, and one more thing, Willow. What about Danny? Willow turned and Willow looked at Alexis and she says, look, I know Danny saw Scout at Christmas. Scout told me. But, and Alexis just looked at her. She goes, but I never told Drew. And I don't plan on telling Drew because I don't agree with that. She said, but since we don't know Drew's prognosis yet, I don't think Danny should see Scout. She said, because Drew would definitely come back and, take action. So let's see his prognosis. And Alexis says, okay, that makes sense. So Willow left and Alexis is through the, and I was happy for her because she didn't even have time or care about second thoughts about a stroke. I saw him earlier today in the courtroom and he's had huh? Right? Alexis, don't, she ain't, didn't think about it, don't care. So, Kai showed up at the hospital with the press relief that the staff made because they've kept everything under wraps so far. Hospitals not said a word about, a congressman, Drew came, blah, 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 had a stroke. Well, realistically, I know they do press releases, but a hospital wouldn't come out and just say something about, somebody's personal medical business like that. Um, anyway, so Willow, Nina's worried. Where is Willow? She didn't know she went to go see Alexis. And Kai's talking to her saying that he's conflicted. The Drew he knew when he first started working for him, or the Drew he thought he knew, he said, I'm finding it doesn't exist. And that's only because Willow says, I've been meaning to ask you, how do you feel about Drew knowing that he was blackmailing Trina's parents? And he says, honestly, I'm so disappointed. And she says, I'm surprised you're still working for him. He says, if Drew wouldn't have had this stroke, I wouldn't be. He said, because then that's what he said. The man that I thought he was, I mean, he forgot to say he was the one that paid for my surgery, giving me a chance to play football again. He didn't mention that. He says, but I looked up to the man. She says, and I had no idea, what he was really like to other people. And Nina talked about, I worked with Drew on the campaign trail. She says, and in the beginning, when he was really considering what good he could do, she says he had given a speech to a bunch of, on the campaign trail, or to, forget who he said, maybe his future little members, staff members. She said he was so inspiring. They all were in awe. She says, I thought he was going to do so much good. And she said, Kai, you seem to be a very dedicated young man. She says, I don't know if I would just give up too soon. She said, because you can still do good in that position. And Kai's just thinking, like, maybe I can, maybe I can't, whatever. But Willow does show back up, and Kai gets her to read the statement. Nina had read it, and she thought it was okay. So Willow looks over it, and she says, "No, this is good." And he goes, "Can you please sign at the bottom?" He gives her a tablet pen. She signs, and Lucas and Elizabeth come around the corner with news. They were saying he suffered some kind of massive, they gave more of a medical name, stroke, and it impacts his motor skills and it impacts his ability to communicate. They are still, and Willow's like, and he goes, we're still waiting on further test results to show, he said, because it could be, you know, the damage could be permanent damage. And Willow actually snapped into more of a medical brain because she says he either would be in like this state, almost like a vegetated state, or within time, he would be able to have, I mean, and with the extensive physical and speech therapy, he can eventually learn to talk again and possibly even walk again. But she says that's highly unlikely. And Lucas looked at her and said, You're right, Willow. And I thought, well, that's a far cry from, I know this sounds funny, but it seems like his face was melting. Come on now, girl. So anyway, Elizabeth, I mean, then Willow goes into the, and Elizabeth looks at her, oh, honey. And she comes over and she hugs Willow, and Willow's leaning on her shoulder. And Nina stepped around and she's looking at Willow's face and not near a tear dropping. And she was like faking the whole thing, hanging on to Elizabeth. And Nina's thinking, huh, right? So Nina, Willow's sitting on the couch. You see that expression on her face right there in the photo? That's the expression she had, like, doggone it. I called 911 just a little too soon. I'm gonna have to make sure that he can't communicate ever again. And Nina walks up. Willow, honey? Willow, how are you doing? You seemed pretty upset there a minute ago with Elizabeth. She looked at Nina. She says, What do you mean? I'm his wife. How is a wife supposed to act? Like, am I not doing enough? Right? And Nina says, well, Willow, remember, you don't love Drew. You can't stand him. You only married him so that it would look good for the trial and to help get your kids back. But the way you were acting there, be careful that, she goes, I did feel that way until he collapsed right before me. And Nina looked at her and said, okay, but be careful because all that sympathy could turn into love. And Willow just looked at her and then stared back off into space. And I thought, no, Nina, that's the look of a plotter and a schemer. And that look there, you don't know if she's plotting and scheming against you. Because remember, your daughter actually can't stand you. Don't forget that, Nina. Willow only says mommy when she wants to draw you close to get something from you. And then she's cutting you off, yelling at you, saying, I hate you and I'll never forgive you. Nina. Now, mind you, she took Drew back. She took you back. But look at what she did to the folks she took back. So be careful, Nina. So anyway, we shall see. I'm just waiting for them to finally show Drew that, incapacitated in the hospital bed. That needs to be tomorrow, you would think, right? We shall see. And then if they don't show him tomorrow, I got something to say about that. We'll talk about, you know what? We will talk about that on Saturday too, right? So now we have Liz before she got to the hospital. She went to see Laura. It was a real nice gesture. She was telling Laura she knows what it's like to now be going home to an empty house because your family is so far away. And Laura was strong, but she did. She told Elizabeth, you are right. It does get lonely. And she goes, I know you're doing a lot of FaceTiming. She says, yes, I am. And she says, but I do have a lot of work here that is keeping me so busy being the mayor. So, but Elizabeth was just there saying, look, I'm here. If you ever want someone to just be sad with, call me. I understand. Right? So Laura said, thank you. Thank you for that. Um, we have, let's see. I said Liz goes to see Laura. Colin, Director Colin questions Lulu and Rocco. He wanted to know more about Dalton and his lab and, when was the last time Rocco had seen Dalton? And Rocco said, I haven't seen Professor Dalton until, the last time I saw him was the night of the break-in of the lab. I haven't seen him since. He goes, um, Dalton asked him, Colum asked him something, and Rocco says, I really don't know. Because I didn't know the man. But I didn't do, he goes, I thought he was doing illegal animal testings, but they weren't at that lab. And he says, they weren't, I didn't find proof. He didn't say at that lab. Because remember, nobody knows it was really Emma and Gio that freed the animals from the second lab. He said, but I was wrong about that. And so Colin pretty much said, okay, if you, remember anything or hear of anything, and he gave Lulu his card, right? Now, before Lulu and Rocco walked in, because he met him at Bobby's, because he knew Britt was staying there. Britt comes down the stairs with her bags. Carly's there, and she sees him sitting right there, Colin, and she's like, And he just looks at her like, yeah, you better be moving out, right? And so she goes straight up to Carly. And oh, Britt was being her nasty britch, right? Trying to pick a fight with Carly. And Carly pretty much would say things back to her, but was trying to figure out, why are you doing this? So after Column's meeting with Lulu and um, Rocco, he brings his little bill and his money up to the counter where Britt and Carly are, and he bumps Britt's arm as he's putting the bill with the money on the counter. And Britt looks at him and he just looks at her. He doesn't even say, excuse me. And he kind of bumps and puts it there. And Carly kind of looks like, ooh. And he walked off. And then Britt really tried to say something to Carly. And Carly walked away around the counter and says, you know what? You tell me what's really going on here. What's really going on? She said, I know when someone is trying to goat me. She says, and you, Britt, are trying to goat me. Well, I'm not going to play along. Go find somebody else to annoy. No, you just won't admit. Oh, she now getting louder and more stupid, obnoxious. And Carly just looks at her. And finally, Jason walks in. And Jason says, what's going on here? Carly just looks at him and Britt said, oh, Carly was trying to let me know, again, how she's the most important. She pretty much lied on Carly. And Carly is just looking at her like, well, you lying, right? And Jason is looking. Now we're going to see what happens tomorrow, because Britt was trying to stage this so she could tell Jason, you know what, Jason? I don't even want to be involved with you, with her. I thought I could do this, but I can't. I don't want to see you again, because you remember she's supposed to break up with Jason. And I thought, that's why Britt is doing that. She actually wanted Carly to haul off and hit her in the face so she could really tell Jason, no, no. You choose right now between Carly and me, right now. And she would know Jason would never do that, right? So anyway, tomorrow she'll break up with Jason. Now, Agent Brennan goes to see Joss at her place. And she goes, wow, you coming here to see me? Normally you call me to the office. And he says, listen, I got to fill you in on something, Agent Jax. Director Colin is in town, and he is a threat to you. She says, what do you mean a threat to me? She says, I've kept you pretty much off the books. Your file and your activities as being an agent is in my locked, file box in my office. It's not kept where all the other agent stuff is. I pretty much kept you off the books. And she says, why? I'm a bona fide agent. She goes, for me, yeah, you are. And you're good. You have potential. He says, but I have been looking out for you. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, doggone. If that's looking out for her, you didn't do that good a job, because remember, that's what Vaughn was saying. You're putting her in more danger. She's not ready. He says, Colin, he would look into your background. He would find out who your mother is, who your father is. He would then use you, but he would send you away. He said, because he has that power. He will send you away and put you in more dangerous ops than I ever would. He says, so, effective immediately, Agent Jax. You are no longer an active agent of the WSB. And she goes, what? No, you said I have to, get on Spoon Island and I have to get close to my Uncle Lucas. You had me, push him to go stay with Marco. Now, we all know everybody. Lucas didn't make that decision based on just Josslyn. Come on now, right? So he says, no, listen, Pascal from the Five Poppies? He said was butler on Spoon Island now. As soon as you set foot in that door, he is going to recognize you. Period, Josslyn. It is too dangerous. And so he says, now, you are what's called a sleeper cell. He says, you're deactivated. You are to return to your normal life as a college student, finish out your last year. And if and when the coast is clear enough and Colum is back where he's supposed to be, then I could call upon you. But as of now, no. Do I make myself clear to you? And she says, do I have a choice? And he says, no, you don't. Right? And I thought, oh, is this the way they're going to get horrible WSB agent Josslyn out of that whole spy storyline? Right? So he says, but stay away from Spoon Island. She goes to GH to see Lucas under the guise of, my mother misses you. Can't you both make up? And he's like, well, I know exactly. I miss her too, but Carly is a bit much. Carly still feels the way she feels. She goes, although, ooh, there's a pesky butler, Pascal. Oh, the way he peers at me, right? And she says, oh, really? He says, but luckily, he's in Paris tidying up some business. So Marco and I get a reprieve. And he goes, hey, why don't you come over to Spoon Island, Windermere? Let's drink, or let's get together. She goes, is some wine involved? And he goes, of course it is. She goes, I'm there. Now she knows Brennan just told her, stay away from Spoon Island. She knows that. She don't care. Watch. Josslyn is gonna get under his crosshairs, and he is. Because bottom line, I already think he knows. He already told Britt, I know what Jason Morgan did at the Five Poppies. My gut says Colette worked for him because remember, Colette was answering to someone else other than just Pascal. Colette would have told Colum that about Josslyn Jax and Vaughn. So I think he knows about Joss, but some reason Jax thinks he doesn't. So we'll see. But Josslyn's about to get into some trouble. Um, the good part, and this was so good, everybody. Wait, this is funny. Tracy says, Jason, come here. He goes, you wanted to speak to me? She goes, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Oh, I know you heard about Drew. And he's like, yes, I did. No, or did he? No, she didn't. She told him. She says, Drew Kane had a stroke. And Jason's just looking at him like, oh, okay. And he says, and I'm going to tell you, like I told Michael, she said, because first I thought Karma came calling for Drew. She said, but Karma's not that neat and timely unless you help it along. So I'm going to tell you, like I told Michael, I am willing to be your alibi if you need one. for this afternoon, or for during the time Drew had a stroke. And he's looking at her and he's kind of pleased, but he goes, Tracy, I don't need you to be my alibi. I don't need an alibi. I didn't do anything to Drew. He goes, I didn't do anything to my brother that would cause him to have a massive stroke. He says, no. And I'm thinking, that's not Jason's MO, Tracy, right? But it was cute to me the way she said, I will be your alibi. And I thought, Michael's not going to want you to be an alibi for him ever. Because you end up having to tell the truth, Tracy. So, no, you're a very untrustworthy alibi, right? So, anyway, Jason says no. And he says, but I got to tell Danny about Drew. And he says, will you be here so we could tell him together? And she said, yes. So they brought Danny down and Jason told her. And he says, man, I don't like Drew, but that is Scout's father. He goes, how's Scout? Can I call her? Can I text her to see how she's doing? Is she scared? And Jason says, no, you can't contact her just yet. He says, for one thing, you don't know if Scout already knows yet. You don't know if they've told her. So no, you can't text her. And um, we don't know, and then Tracy may have said, and we don't know the extent of Drew's, what his prognosis is going to be with this stroke. Jason said, Drew would, if we rush into this and Drew recovers really fast, he says, Drew would definitely use the fact that you broke the restraining order. He would use it against the both of us. Okay? So we need to wait to see the situation first. And so Danny says, okay. He goes, but then Willow could say I could see Scout. Is there anyone who could talk to Willow? And so Jason said, I think I might know somebody. So he took him over to Alexis's. And, first and foremost, I want to tell you what a great kid you are. She's talking about, Mom, yeah, blah, blah. Sam would be so proud. And he told her that he had heard about Drew. And he goes, Grandma, does this mean, I should be able to see Scout now. I should be able to see Scout. She goes, honey. He goes, can you ask Willow? And she said, I did ask Willow. And Willow said, right now, we don't know how bad Drew is, the condition that he's going to be in. She says, give it a little time, Danny. Because she says, Willow doesn't feel the way Drew feels about you and Scout. So let's see what goes on with Drew. And then Willow and I are going to talk about UNC and Scout again. Because Willow did say, no, let's find out Drew's prognosis and then we can revisit it. So she says, so he goes, so that means there's a chance? And Alexis says, honey, there's a really good chance. And that made him happy. And that actually made me happy too, right? So I'm going to tell you the funny part. The funny part is Chase waltzes into the PCPD, and Dante comes in with his file, and he goes, I've got the results of your internal affairs investigation. And he goes, do you want to hear it from me, Mac, or internal affairs? Chase looks at him and says, I'd rather hear it from you. And in my mind, I thought, wrong move, Dante, because Chase is going to get funky on you. Okay? So Dante sits down and he reads him the results, saying that, he went against protocol. He just all, what he did was 100% wrong, undermining the department and the DA's case and blah, blah, blah. They said, however, after the investigations, they have determined he did no illegal actions, meaning they didn't have proof he erased the footage on the traffic cams because let's face it, Chase didn't do it, Brennan did. And what he did was unethical and, you know, procedurally incorrect. This is so here's what they're going to do. They did not fire Chase, but they said they are demoting him from detective back down to beat cop. And I said, I like it. I like it because now you got to come to work in a uniform. Now you don't get to just come and go whenever you please. Now you got to almost punch a clock like the other beat cops, right? You don't get to have your own desk like the detective's desk. So Chase said, that is so unfair. And Dante said, look, you're lucky you didn't lose your job. He says, and did you seriously think, Chase, that your actions were not going to have any consequences? And Chase looked at him. I did what I felt was right. And he says, okay, so you got to own up to your actions, right? He says, you have a choice to make. And he handed him his file. He says, let me know what your decision's going to be. Chase snatches the file, barrels out of the PCPD, barrels into the house. Oh, he's in that living room, well, the area where he and Michael fought the day before. He's mad. He's pacing back and forth, hands on his head, and he sees the backgammon set there on the little ottoman. He goes over, gammon pieces go everywhere, right? He's mad. So Tracy walks in, and Tracy's like, uh, she stepped on a piece. She goes, what happened in here? And he said, I took some frustration out on the backgammon pieces. I'm sorry, bored. So he's, trying to put some together. And Tracy hits him off the couch and she sits down, right? And she pulls his arm down so he could sit down. She said, Chase, what happened? Did you lose your job? And he said, no, but they demoted me back to beat cop. And I honestly don't know what I'm going to do. And Tracy says, well, you know how I felt about the length you went to for Willow. She says, now this seems like these are the consequences you got to face. She says, so I suggest you and my granddaughter, Brooklyn, talk over your options. What you gonna do? And he just looks at her. And I thought, oh no, reality is setting in. Wait till he finds out Drew had a stroke. Who do you think he's gonna comfort? Because everybody, I'm telling you right now, he is absolutely not gonna think Willow had nothing to do with that. And if anybody says, don't you think it's a little suspicious? Drew just has a stroke out of the blue. Chase will say, Willow cannot give a person a stroke. She can't. he he'll be ready to fight again. So, yeah, he and Willow will be in the sack, I say within the next week. It maybe two. Maybe 2 weeks. We shall see. But that she's gonna work on Chase because Chase builds her up the way she used to build Drew up. They need that ego feeding, and Chase feeds her ego, right? So, all right, everybody, that is it. Let me see. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Oh, I forgot to say something yesterday and I highlighted it. Oh, yesterday, backflash here. I forgot to talk about the conversation between Sonny and Justine. Now, remember how she goes, that sounds like a threat because he goes, you need to recuse yourself from this case. And she says, and why would I do that? He said, because you're compromised. You were in my house and you overheard Drew say he was going to come after Michael. And he goes, you don't need that coming out, right? And she says, sounds like a threat. He says, it's not a threat. I'm telling you this to help you because it will hurt your career if it comes out. He goes, on top of the fact, you did it your all when you represented Willow and you didn't win. You don't want to try Michael because you're not going to win it. And then how's that going to look for your career? And she looked at Sonny. She says, "Oh, don't worry." She goes, "Don't worry. If the PCPD does want to bring charges against Michael, I'm not going to be the one to, you know, try the case." She said, "Because I tried the case against the right person." She says, "Oh, I accused and tried to she goes, I prosecuted the person that shot Drew Kane. It's just the evidence disappeared." She says, "It was definitely Willow Tate." She says, "So no, I'm not going to try to send Michael to jail because he didn't do it." And I'm thinking, Justine, do you really feel that way? Because you did just tell Dante to build a case against his brother. So it's build a case against his brother so you can hand over to somebody else? Oh, well, I guess so, right? But she knows Willow did it. But let's see what everybody feels about the stroke situation. They gonna think it was just medical bad luck. All right, everybody, that is it. That's it for today. Do not forget Saturday, 2 days away, we will be live on YouTube. And I will see you tomorrow for another daily recap of General Hospital.